Welcome to today's Kurdistan Accreditation Association for Education Foundations webinar. Today, we're going to explore two essential components of accreditation processing. We're going to look at selecting effective accreditation liaison officers and peer evaluators. Both are critical for maintaining quality, fairness, and transparency in institutional accreditation. I really want to thank you for attending this session. Please note at the bottom of your screen, there is a closed caption button where you can turn on translation services. This presentation is being recorded and is the property of the Commission. It will be sent to all of our registered participants so you can watch it later. Please do not record it without prior permission. And if you have specific questions regarding your institution, please contact KAAE for that information. So welcome. My name is Christy Bishop. I am a Vice President for Institutional Field Relations with the Middle States Commission on Higher Education. I'm very excited to talk about this topic because I have been an Accreditation Liaison Officer, an ALO, and I've been a peer evaluator. So hopefully I can provide my experience, the importance of both of these two positions, and give you a lot more information on how to participate. To submit questions for this webinar, please note there's a chat button at the bottom. This will allow you to put your questions and answers. We've reserved time at the end of the webinar so you can get your questions answered. So please add questions during the presentation and we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the webinar. So the outcomes of this webinar is to really look at the roles and responsibilities of the ALO and identify those key characteristics, skills, and qualifications that makes a great accreditation liaison officer. We'll look at how to apply ethical and conflict of interest guidelines. We'll understand the procedures for recruiting, training, and assigning peer evaluators. And again, identify all the opportunities, professional development, and continuous improvement with accreditation. So we'll begin with the Accreditation Liaison Officer, the ALO. An ALO is a very critical position. It represents the institutions to KAAE. It ensures that there's compliance and timely reporting, and it facilitates that institutional alignment with KAAE standards. It acts as that communicator and a coordinator. So it gets all the questions and the concerns of the institution and is able to translate that up to KAAE, and then also translate what KAAE is trying to say with their guidelines and procedures back to the institution. So it's that important conduit for the institution. So why does that matter? It's really a critical component. It maintains all of accreditation standards, institutional compliance. It allows a lot of transparency and accountability between the member institution and KAAE, and it makes sure things go smoother, that there's clear communication, there's strong alignment, and you know how to interpret the policies. Let me give you a couple examples from my experience as an ALO. When I was at two institutions ago, I heard about an academic division that was offering this brand new program at a job site at the Ford Motor Plant. Well, they didn't talk to me about it, and they didn't realize the accreditation needs that they needed to consider before offering this whole brand new program at a different location. So it was really important that when a decision like that is made, that the ALOs include it so that they can translate the accreditation standards and procedures that are required when you make a new program like that. Another example of why an ALO matters is Middle States had a brand new policy that came out on credit hour. Well, this definitely alerted me as the ALO that I needed to have my institution review our policy on credit hour. And so I began that process. I let my leadership know that this was an important thing, and it went through our process for policy review so we could compare where our policy was to the Middle States policy so we could make sure that we stayed in compliance. So those are just two examples of why it's very important to have an ALO to be able to look at what's happening at the institution and translate that through accreditation standards, and then look what's happening at the commission and bring it down to the institution. So the role of the ALO is very important. It's that key point of contact between the institution and the KAAE. It's the president and the ALO. Those are the key contacts. This person also oversees all the submission of reports that are due, compliance documentation, all the important things that the institution needs to complete to stay accredited. It coordinates all those accreditation related activities and is that really important person for making sure that everything is organized and provided. And then it communicates those updates, those policies and standards to the institution and to the broader community. So it's a very central role. So what are we looking for when we are trying to identify the best ALO for your institution? We want someone who has the appropriate authority, time, and resources. So what that means is authority that they when they see something that's important, they can alert the institution and the institution pays attention to them. They says, oh yeah, this is very important. We need to put this into place. Time. The time for allotted for an ALO could be very different depending on the time of the accreditation cycle the institution is in. If you are just starting the accreditation cycle, it could take amount of time because you are helping coordinate the evaluation, the self-study, the visit, all the paperwork that's involved, and that can be pretty timely and time intensive for the ALO. If you are not in that cycle, there are times that it doesn't take as much time. So it just really depends on where you're at and maybe having the time and resources to help support. And the resources are important on that you have what you need to do the job. So thinking about that when becoming an ALO. It's also very important that you have the institutional knowledge, that you know what is happening at your institution, that if decisions are being made that need to have the lens of accreditation, that's important that you're involved in those decisions, that you can put your feedback and information in, and that you have credibility, visibility, and trust. When a question comes up, that when you have an answer on here's how it is interpreted through accreditation, that your institution trusts you, that they know that you have the credibility and that you know what you're talking about. So it's important to have that kind of credibility. So it's very important to have those things so that that you make a really good ALO. So many different positions can be an ALO. So thinking about it doesn't necessarily have to be a certain position. What I have seen with ALOs is they might be in the institutional research, they might be the vice president of academic affairs, they could be in charge of strategy, they could be a faculty member, a dean, an associate dean. The position isn't as important. I've seen many different positions be very successful in this. It's making sure that they have the adequate authority, time, and resources is the most important. So what does an ALO do? The most important thing to do is they look through the institution through that accreditation lens. They're able to understand all the accreditation standards, the foundation criteria, the affiliation requirements, and be really knowledgeable in that so they can use that lens to see the institution. They integrate all those standards into the larger strategic operational planning so that they can see here's what's important to KAAE, here's how it impacts our institution. They ensure that compliance with those accreditations is embedded in practice. So looking at all of your practices and making sure that it goes with the criteria. Oftentimes that might involve making sure you're doing continuous improvement in every area of your institution. And then that's very important documenting that because it'll be a part of the standards. It's also interpreting. So distributing and explaining here's what's happening through KAAE so that everyone understands it and notifies them on anything that comes through and new policies that may happen. It also goes back the other way. So if you have anything that's a substantive change, you've changed program offerings or governance or mission or even location, that you've notified KAAE of that and managing the processes that are necessary for that. And that can take a little bit of time, but knowing what processes you need to and paperwork you need to complete. And also notifying KAAE of any other external requests or audits that are happening at the institution. So again, communication up and down. Also, just explaining policy, being able to have a very good understanding of the policies and be able to distribute to your institution, explain what they mean, explain the impact of those to your institution. That's very important. It's critical to understand. Coordinating any kind of communication that might be between KAAE, government or regulatory bodies, anything that has to do with the institutional status. Um, Making sure that there's consistency between data that's being submitted to KAAE and any other that's being provided to external regulatory bodies. So understanding data, I think, is a pretty important part of this position because you want to make sure that that's consistent. And if you provide an outcome, that you understand what that outcome, how it is developed, and that it's being the same depending on what body you're presenting it to. So very much understanding data. Making sure you're on time. Being on time is so important, meeting deadlines, and any kind of requirements, that you have timely compliance to everything that has to do with national, regional regulations that intersect with the KAAE requirements. And then finally, making sure that you disclose any potential conflicts of interest, that you're operating with ethical standards and integrity, especially as you're representing that in your institution in any of your dealings with KAAE. There is a really nice institutional selection guideline that KAAE has provided that really helps guide the institution on how to choose the right ALO. So I'm sure this document will be provided very shortly, but it has really good guidelines that provides guidance on how to do this. It makes it a very structured and transparent process so that you know exactly why the person was chosen and how to choose the ALO. It also assists affiliate institutions in understanding all those important qualities, the qualifications, the responsibilities that are required for appointing the right ALO. And then finally, it outlines the attributes, responsibilities, and procedures for appointment. So please look at the institutional selection guidelines. It is a really excellent document to help with this process. So let me go over a few of those key selection principles. What things are really important to choose the right ALO? The first important thing is making sure they have good institutional representation. What that means is that they're an internal member of the institution, that they already work there, that they have substantial knowledge of its operations, its policies, and its goals. This ensures that your ALO is deeply familiar with your institution's culture, your governance, your academic standards, and that allows them to represent the institution in all accreditation matters. So it's very important that they know about the college. They know about everything that happens there. That means that they can't be a consultant. They have to be a part of the institution. The second thing that's really important is that they have authority and access, that they have access to senior leadership and decision making, so that they have a good way to facilitate that communication. They have to know some of those major decisions that are being made, so that they can give feedback on how that might affect accreditation, or if it does, how they can let KAAE know that this is happening. So they have to have the right access, and they have to have the credibility that people will listen to them. So making sure that they be able to address all those accreditation challenges promptly and align any processes and practices with our standards. The other important thing is that they have professional integrity. They should be respected and trusted member. They should demonstrate professionalism. They should adhere to KAAE's ethical standards. This trust ensures credibility in all communications, both internal and external. So the person has a lot of credibility in what they're presenting, and people can trust them. That they finally have capacity and commitment. What that means is that they have enough time to do the job appropriately, and they have enough resources and capacity to manage these responsibilities. There is time and resources needed. There's deadlines for when things need to be submitted, and there's definitely things that need to be written and provided. So making sure that they have all those resources and time to conduct that business is very important. And finally, the exclusivity of the role. What that means is the president cannot be the ALO. This needs to be a separate person. It also cannot be an external consultant. It has to be somebody who works at the institution, an independent voice, but somebody who has access to the president and can advise the president on accreditation standards. So this allows them to have unbiased communication and reporting and be able to be that trusted person for the president to rely on. It ensures transparency and objectivity in accreditation and really allows the right feedback and support for the institution. So, what are the important selection? What does the best candidate have? What are you looking for an ALO? What are those qualities that are so important? It's really important, again, for that ALO to have that institutional knowledge, to really understand policies, strategic plans, accreditation history, so that they can communicate effectively. They have to know the institution. So that is first and foremost. They also have to have excellent communication skills. This is both oral, writing, and in interpersonal communication. They have to be able to write effectively because they are providing a lot of written documents to KAAE. They have to be able to communicate effectively with their community. That could be orally, that could be through email, but they have to be able to express things very clearly and concisely. Strong English language proficiency is required so that they can have clear and accurate reporting. They have to have organizational skills. They have to be somebody who's very organized, that can manage the documentation, that make sure that they meet the deadlines, that they keep all the accreditation records very clean, but also when they are managing an accreditation evaluation visit, that they have the organization skills to create agendas, to set up visits, to plan logistics, just somebody who is very good with organization. They have to have access to decision making. They need to have the ear of senior leadership so that senior leadership knows that there is something that needs to be attended to. If something comes up where you need to have an answer about something that's happening at the institution, your leadership needs to know that they need to respond to the ALO quickly. So they have to have enough authority that everyone understands, oh, the ALO has asked for this. It is important to respond as quickly as possible and as accurately as possible. They have a commitment to compliance, so they understand KAAE's standards and commitment to uphold them throughout the accreditation cycle. That they consistently monitor what's happening with institutional policies and make sure that everything meets KAAE's requirements. And then finally, a fluency in English language. It's really important to have that proficiency in English so that they communicate with KAAE and other accreditation bodies. It's important to have that fluency so they can understand policies, they can write reports, and they can engage in formal meetings. So those are the important things that an ALO will possess. How is an ALO chosen? There's a very formal process that is important because it allows for both fairness and accountability and transparency. This is outlined in the guide I talked about earlier. But what happens originally, there's a call for application. So within the institution, they announce the ALO position is available. It outlines what's involved in the role, what the responsibilities are, and what you need to be eligible for that criteria. This ensures that all qualified candidates are aware that this is a possibility and aware of the opportunity. Then the institution would collect any nominations and application submission from any of the qualified candidates. This could include their CV, a statement of interest, references, anything that helps document the candidate's experience and suitability. Then they do a screening and really look to make sure that the candidates meet those key eligibility requirements and have that necessary institutional knowledge and authority. Once they have the list of candidates, they make sure that they demonstrate that they have alignment with all those principles and criteria necessary for the position. There's an interview and assessment to evaluate the candidate's communication skills, their familiarity with accreditation standards, and their strategic alignment with institutional goals. This verifies that the candidate has the capability to act as an effective liaison. And then finally, the president would choose, based on those selection criteria and the selection committee, the final candidate, and then formally notify KAAE of the appointment. This formal appointment establishes the official link with the institution and KAAE and allows that candidate to be very successful in representing the institution to KAAE. What is unique and really important in this is there is an evaluation and reappointment of the position on a yearly basis. This maintains accountability for the position and supports continuous improvement. So making sure that the candidate is reviewed on these 5 things on a yearly basis, make sure that the ALO remains responsive and effective for the institution. And that's very important. So the evaluation process would have a structured review that looks at their communication skills, that their compliance with timeliness and accuracy in submission of reports, self-studies, and any required documentation, that they have a lot of accreditation support, so that there's a lot of that you can see that the ALO facilitates that institutional alignment with the KAAE criteria and supports all accreditation activities, that there's stakeholder engagement. The ALO is able to disseminate updates, policy changes, any requirements, so shows that they're able to have that stakeholder engagement to answer any questions, and that they conduct themselves very professionally. They adhere to ethical standards, institutional credibility, and commitment to accreditation readiness. So this yearly evaluation really shows that that importance of the ALO and make sure that they are continually to support the institution. Now, what is also really nice is there's lots of professional development available for the ALO. So they do have that connection so they can continue to improve and continue to serve their institution. So KAAE has some supported development. This includes webinars, workshops, peer learning forums, and guidance materials that really help reinforce the ALO competencies. So this is really nice to help keep them up to date on all KAAE activities. Also, there's hope that the institution provides a lot of support to their ALO so that they can have that professional development by having access to any internal training, leadership development programs, and institutional briefings. Knowledge renewal. Allowing participation in professional development activities is very important so that they continually to strengthen their skills and maintain their credibility. And collaborative learning, being able to share those insights and lessons learned with colleagues within their institution and across KAAE's network, fostering lots of culture of multiple learning. What I found as an ALO is I did a lot of training in different groups on my campus. I made sure I trained my board of trustees so they understood the necessity of accreditation. I would train the faculty so they were aware of the importance of the evaluation and the standards and how that is important to the institution. And then I was constantly just training senior leadership on anything that was accreditation related and how their decisions were very important to keep in compliance with standards. So a lot of that. What is also nice is I would sometimes do outside training. So as the ALO, I would be called on to maybe do presentations at national conferences or other things to show a continued use of the skills and knowledge with ALO and accreditation standards. So how do you stay updated? So definitely participating in all those KAAE sponsored trainings, sessions, conferences, workshops, materials. That is important. I think that is staying updated is probably the most important part of this position. One important thing you can do is be a peer evaluator, which we'll talk about how to be a peer evaluator here in a little bit. But that really provides such a great way to apply your knowledge to a different institution. And then you bring back all that great information to make sure your institution is very strong. Engaging with other ALOs and the KAAE Commission is also a great way to stay updated. It's good to have those peers at other institutions to say, how are you doing this? Or what's a good way to try work on this policy? So having those connections that you can meet either at KAAE sponsored events or as a peer evaluator. And then read everything. Read every email, every policy update, stay up to date on the website. The more you read and understand, the more you can apply it to your institution. So we already do have a question that I'm gonna jump in and answer. Based on my experience, where does the ALO position, where should the ALO be positioned with the institution organization, and who should they report to? I do think that's an important thing to think about. At a couple of institutions ago, I was the director of institutional research in the ALO, and I reported to the vice president of academics. That was okay because then the vice president would then take my knowledge to senior leadership, but I felt like I didn't have the president's ear as important as I needed. So I think it's okay for the ALO to not report directly to the president, but have access to the president so that when something comes up, the president knows this is important. At my last institution, I was the vice president of academics and I reported directly to the president. And it was a good position at the time for the ALO because I was a part of senior leadership. I had access to the board of trustees. I had access to the faculty. And I had a lot of credibility in that position. But I also relied heavily on my institutional my IR office because they actually are the ones who had to put in data and respond to the commission. So it was a coordination between me and IR to make sure some of that is happening. IR is a really strong place for it, but it could be any place in the institution as long as they have the president's ear and that credibility and that knowledge of the institution. So I hope that helped answer that question. So moving on, let's talk a little bit about being a peer evaluator. Being a peer evaluator really is critical to accreditation. It really helps, it really is having that peer, that person who understands your institution, look at KAAE standards and requirements and apply them to your school through the lens of understanding what it means to be at a school like yours. They are important for our evaluation activities because it makes sure that there is professionalism, integrity, and alignment to KAAE's mission, and it enhances quality across the whole region. So this is such a critical position. The role of a peer evaluator is to do institutional reviews and site visits. Definitely, that is a very critical part. Assessing compliance with all accreditation standards. So being very familiar with the accreditation standards and be able to see if another institution is meeting those. To provide constructive and evidence-based feedback. So having a peer be able to provide collegial advice and say, here's how we do it at our school. It might be something to consider, or here's how I think you could strengthen where you're at so that you are meeting the standards. So having that expert provide that feedback is really important. And then modeling professionalism, fairness, and collaboration. It really helps, your expertise helps strengthen other institutions' capacity for improvement. It really shows success in another place and really helps using your academic expertise, your institutional experience, and your commitment to quality assurance help another institution. So how is KAAE recruiting peer evaluators? There's a very transparent and merit-based process that is designed to ensure diversity, expertise, and integrity. They are going to recruit peer evaluators through public announcements, through institutional nominations, and professional recommendations. So as spreading the word, it is very important to look at very quality people that have a diverse set of experiences, expertise, and merit that can really help become a peer evaluator. We're looking for people who have expertise in different areas, and they have a commitment to accreditation standards. There will be an application and CV submission. There'll be screening and vetting to see who meets those qualifications. We will require all of the peer evaluators to complete an evaluator data form so that we have information on them, and there'll be a renewal every 3 years to update and make sure that your information is complete. Now, once you are selected, there are really great trainings and preparation so that you know exactly what would be required of you before you go to an institution. There'll be orientation sessions that will provide lots of information on policies, on standards, on how to do the evaluation, what is required, what do you need to fill out, how to work with each other, how a visit looks like, how to work with a team chair or be assigned being a team chair. So lots of good information on that. Also, there's continuous and specialized training. So besides just the evaluation visit, peer evaluators may be needed for follow-up visits. They may be needed to review substantive change requests or to look at policies and procedures. So definitely using peer evaluators in many different ways. There'll be structured and comprehensive training for all of that. Simulation and case study exercises are the best way to say, how can I try out some of these things and how does it look like before I get into the real situation? And then there could be some coaching on how to make it better. And definitely refresh your trainings before each assignment so you know exactly what is required and what is needed. So this helps make sure that you can conduct those assessments with integrity, fairness, and adherence to the standards. So how are they assigned? So peer evaluators are assigned typically, but for a number of different ways. So we definitely would look at all the ways to make sure that you truly get a peer. Looking at academic discipline and expertise. So trying to find a content expert for each of the standards is very important. So if it has to do with students, we want somebody who knows students and student affairs. If it has to do with assessment, somebody very expert in assessment. If it's finance, finding somebody who knows higher education finance. And those are critical in all the standards, is making sure that you have some content expertise in each of these areas. So that you have a really strong team. So one person doesn't have to know everything, but you have somebody who knows each of those areas. That you are a true peer, that you match the institution type and mission, so that it is a peer evaluation. So you wouldn't want to send somebody who only has experience with small privates with maybe only 100 students to an institution that has thousands of students, that's public and has different needs and different experiences. So try to make sure the peers are very true. Making sure that language and regional balance is there, so that they can understand and comprehend the evaluation and understand everything that's happening as a peer. That there's a conflict of interest review. So if you can't have somebody who used to work at your institution or graduated from your institution or applied and was not hired for your institution within a certain time. So making sure that that is looked at and reviewed. And then finally, making sure there's a good team composition and diversity. So looking holistically at the team, that it is a good team. All of the peer evaluations do sign a statement of ethical conduct. This is very important before going on evaluation. It makes sure that they maintain confidentiality. So what they learn, they can't go and talk about your institution, that there's a confidentiality of what they learned and what they were exposed to. That they are being very objective and fair. I think one of the challenges of a peer evaluator sometimes sees is they think that everything is exactly how their institution handles things. So when they go to a new institution, they're like, well, here, this is how we do it. So that's the only way it is done. That is not true at all. Being open to there are multiple ways that you can do things, but making sure they still meet the standard, even if it's very different than what you do at your institution. That the peer evaluator discloses all those conflicts of interest. That is being very having that integrity of saying here this could possibly be a conflict of interest, and making sure you behave respectfully and professionally. That you're fair, independent, and that you have professional values. Peer evaluators should have continuous improvement, like we talked about with the ALO, that there are lots of ways that we can make sure there's feedback so that they know how to improve and have continuous improvement going forward. There are post-visit surveys from both the institution and the team chair that allows trend data to be looked at and seeing what we can learn from the experience. There's evaluation rubrics on professionalism, analysis, and report quality, again, so that we can have continuous improvement and lots of feedback from peer and staff. This is designed, again, to make sure that there is improvement, there can be additional training. It also recognizes excellence and addresses underperformance in a very timely and constructive manner, which helps, again, your institution so that you know you have the very best people coming to do your peer evaluation. So why would you want to be a peer evaluator? It is the most wonderful thing. I definitely cannot say enough about it. It is a wonderful way to share and learn about other ways of doing things. You go to these other schools and you learn different leadership styles, different organization methods, just different ways to help students that you may not have learned in any other way. So it is definitely professional development for yourself. It allows you to then engage with different institutions. It allows you to share ideas. It gives you a deeper insight on accreditation standards and practices, because when you apply it, when you teach something, you learn it more than if you just read it. When you apply it at another institution, it allows you to understand it even better. So you know it very, very well. It strengthens quality assurance across your education. And then it enhances your own institution. I think you learn ideas that you can bring back to your own institution, but then you also realize that maybe your own institution is doing things pretty good. When you don't ever get outside of your own walls, you only criticize yourself. You think, oh, we could be doing so much better. But when you see other institutions, you come back with a realization that you are doing a great job. And it helps you understand that a little bit more. And that every college is dealing with similar issues. And it's not just yours, and you can work together to make those better. So I cannot say enough about being a peer evaluator. I think it's one of the best experiences. So who can become a peer evaluator? So make sure that the applicants have the relevant academic or administrative experiences. Remember all those different areas. We are looking, they're all different types of expertise so that it meets all the standards, that they understand higher education governance and quality frameworks, that they complete the KAAE peer evaluator training, which definitely will prepare you to be a good peer evaluator, and that they uphold the ethical conduct that's needed to maintain confidentiality in your reviews. Um, Again, this is faculty members, senior academic officials, quality assurance, accreditation professionals, institutional research, policy experts, and financial. Make sure we get some financial people. So there are a few questions that I see. I do have Dylan Rostam here too to help us answer some questions. And actually, Dylan, did you want to say a few things before we move forward?
Thank you very much, Chrissy. It was actually very beautifully put forward in plain English, all those texts and guidelines. So it's made it easy to understand. Thank you very much for that one. And I'm waiting for my colleagues with their questions. Be happy to answer.
Yeah, we certainly do
Thank you.
have quite a few questions, and we have questions about the ALO role and about the peer evaluator role. So I'll begin with ALO, and then we can transition over to some of those about peer evaluators. So I'm going to start off with a question about policy, or from the perspective of the policy office. Can we update policies or modify procedures and policies in accordance with KAAE without informing the ALO, or for every little detail the ALO needs to be notified?
Well, I don't know, Chrissy, if I
I think it's a good idea to include your ALO because when you're updating policies, there could be, when you have that ALO looking through the lens of accreditation, there could be accreditation issues involved in that policy that need to be included. Also, your ALO will be very informed of other policies, of other regional and national policies that also could be involved that is important to maintain your accreditation. So I would include your ALO when you update policies.
Right on the spot, I think one of the major quality that you mentioned, it was knowledge and institutional knowledge and being aware of changes at the university and the institution and from the KAI perspective as well. So they need to be involved in these changes and reforms. Yeah.
Christy, you spoke a little bit about the placement of the ALO within the organization. We have a question that's hitting at that a little bit further. So would it be appropriate for the ALO to be in their own office with their own team, or is it more effective for the ALO to be placed perhaps under a quality assurance office instead? If you could speak to that placement in a little more detail.
Dylan, did you want to jump in first, or do you want me to?
Yeah, please go ahead. So since you have experience from, let's say, from outside our in working environment in Kurdistan region, I would like to hear that. Then I will add uh, something to it,
Um,
please.
so I think either organization works as long as the ALO is included in information. So and has the ear of senior leadership and the president. So I know that Dylan and I had talked about ALOs having their own office. The only concern I would have about that is that the work is very cyclical. So it's not something that really would be a full-time job because there's times when you're very, very busy and there's times where you're just reading and staying updated. So having that attached to something else, I think would be really important. Also, it keeps your credibility so that you can be involved in other things. So I think the more important thing is that you have the president's ear, that you're involved in decision making, you know what's going on at the institution, and you can look at things that are being developed through that accreditation lens. Dylan, did you want to jump in on any of that too?
Well, due to the nature of our working environment in the region, that's why I suggested would be better to have an ALO office with their own team because there will be a link between the president, vice president for academic affairs, quality assurance, and institutional research and stuff, and policy making, board of trustees and stuff. So having an office and having the responsibility of training and capacity building in your institutions and having a major role at this initial stage of accreditation culture in our region. So I think that office will be an important office in the structure of the university to start with. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So we have a few questions that are getting at the selection of the ALO. So Christy, I'm going to come to you first with a more general question about selection, and then Dylan, I'm going to come to you with more about KAI's role in the selection. So Christy, to you, can a dean or other senior administrator serve effectively as the ALO alongside their existing administrative duties? And what are the potential benefits or conflicts of interest in such a dual role?
Yes, I have seen deans be very successful as an ALO in doing their dean work and being the ALO. Again, I think it depends on the person and making sure that they have those other qualities. Somebody who's organized and knowledgeable and has that's the most important part as being a very successful dean, ALO and dean at the same time. Where it could have some conflicts or some difficulties is sometimes the dean can be very busy and get pulled away from his or her duties and not have the time available to be an effective ALO. And I think that's where it could be a problem. Or if there is something the dean might be doing that it needs more objectivity, that they're meeting the criteria, making sure somebody is looking at what I'm not explaining that well, but there could be some like conflicts in that way. Somebody who might need to say, "Hey, Dean, you need to be doing this as the accreditation standards."
Okay. So the follow-up question to that, Dylan, for you, is we have someone asking about what role KAAE would play in the ALO selection, if any role that KAAE would play in an individual institution selection of ALO.
I think to confirm with Chris's comments there, what Kai has done is creating these roles and responsibilities, and a set of guidelines for institution to follow to when they do the selection of ALOs. Out of that, Kai will not have any direct influence of selecting ALOs, but we will have sort of guidelines and sort of advisory role in the process, because these individuals or these offices will be directly connected to Kai, and there are major elements in Kai's success in working with the institutions. So I think Kai will have an advisory role to selecting these individuals. Yeah.
So Dylan, I'm going to stick with you for a little bit here, and we have a question about the ALO and the region. So we've mentioned a few times here that the ALO needs to be in a role of authority and have access to senior management, and that's often linked in this region to the position that's held. So how can that be addressed?
Well, we are in contact with Ministry of Higher Education to place this role and this office into the current structure of the universities. We are working closely with the Ministry of Higher Education. We were waiting for our KAAE Board of Trustees to pass these policies and the guidelines, and they did this beginning of October, 1st of October, and now they are in public domain, and we are working closely with the Minister of Higher Education to be able to introduce these offices to the universities to start with. Yeah.
Great. Well, we have also a question about when ALOs change. What mechanisms can be put into place to sustain continuity in accreditation efforts when the ALO changes or leadership transitions occur? And Christy, I'm going to have you get us kicked off on that one, and then we can perhaps turn to Dylan to add.
Wow, I've seen successful changes in ALO where the previous one had left really good documents and support for the new one. And then I've seen it where somebody had to just jump in and try to learn it. The situation where the poor ALO had to jump in and learn, there was a lot of support from our commission for that person. We made sure that we had our training. Middle States has training and support for a brand new ALO, even if they didn't have something from their previous ALOs, so that they could be successful. And they have a vice president liaison that could help support and guide them on where to go. But it is always preferable if the previous ALO left the right documentation and information so that the new ALO could jump in.
Great. Dylan, did you want to add to that?
I think that's the best way to do it. Let me keep a very good order in that office and leave behind enough information, enough materials to the next one to follow. and being able to transfer knowledge before leaving. That means that office can have good coordination, switching between the old one and the new one. So the experience, for the sake of the institution and the sake of continuity, it's just transferred in a smooth way. Yeah.
Well, I know we're getting close to time, and I want to make sure we have some time for our peer evaluator questions as well, because we have quite a few in that thread. So I'm going to move over that direction. So thinking about selection of peer evaluators, and Christy, I'm going to come to you first. What are the key strategic criteria used in selecting and preparing peer review evaluators to ensure both expertise and impartiality, particularly in systems where institutional diversity and personal networks are strong?
I think content knowledge was probably be the first thing that we would really look for. Someone who has been doing, who knows a lot about their area, but also has a lot of information about accreditation. I think those are very important. From there, then making sure that they are truly a peer for the institution, that they understand some of the struggles and opportunities that are available, and that they have some expertise to be able to provide feedback and apply that to the standards.
I believe we shouldn't forget that since it's a new concept in our region, it will be a slow but in the right direction development in accreditation process. We will not do this solely alone. We will work closely with our partner. We will have mentorship program and trying to uh, somehow transfer knowledge and experience from our partner into local situation. And as soon our pool is ready and we have our candidates are ready, we start a training program. And we make sure that the basic knowledge will be there. So we leave the rest for the experience and hands-in practice. Yeah.
I, I know that when I look back at my original training, it was in a room with all these other people learning how to be a peer evaluator, and we did simulations and we practiced applying the standards to what could happen and what evidence we'd look for, and that was so helpful before I actually went on a visit. And I know that that's what's in place here too.
So thinking also about who should be a peer evaluator, we have a question about whether or not someone outside an academic institution could serve as a peer evaluator.
I don't know if they would truly be a peer in that sense. I think that being a part of another institution, it gives you knowledge that someone outside of an institution would not be considered. So I personally think you do need to be a part of the institution to be a peer evaluator.
That's right. That's right. And I think the knowledge of some institutions in the region are very important, and making sure that that the background that you have from your own institution when you become a peer evaluator in the other institution can help you to understand how you want to follow the direction, what you are looking for, and familiarity of the regional habits, and trying to make sense of the standard when you're looking at other institution and being able to experience something and bring back to your own institution. So it governs that it has to be a member of an academic institution.
Yeah. So once we have peer evaluators in place, thinking about their role and the work that we're doing, Christine, I'm going to come to you with a question about the feedback. How can peer evaluators provide feedback that not only ensures compliance, but supports institutions who are in the early stages of developing these policy frameworks?
I think this is a critical thing for peer evaluators to do. Because not only are they seeing if they meet the compliance, they're not meeting the standards, they're providing ways for the institution to grow and so that they can be better at meeting those standards. And when they provide that kind of feedback on For instance, maybe they're looking at assessment and they can see that the institution has done assessment, but they don't have a systematic process. They don't have a structure. They don't have a way to document things. Providing how good ways that they've done it or ways that they might consider or how they can grow in that area really helps develop the institution so that they can have that continuous improvement and meet the standards going forward.
I believe being a part of other institution and learning from the institution you visit, it's one of the strongest let's say element of being a peer evaluator and encouraging part of it. One of the major common things we have now that accreditation process is new to all these institutions. There is no institution that can say, well, I have done it. I'm 10 years ahead. I have accreditation from this agency over there. And so everybody knew. So every information you can gather and bring back to your own institution and being able to provide a better practices to do things related to the standards and accreditation process is a winning card for your university. Yeah.
So continuing with that evaluation process, thinking about documentation, thinking about data related to the work of the peer evaluator. Beyond evidence-based documentation, what other types of data are most valuable for peer evaluators when assessing an institution's internal policy framework? And Chrissy, if you want to get us started with that one.
Assessing the internal policy framework is probably where I'm jumping. I'm struggling with that a little bit. I think data is really important for peer evaluators, and I think understanding some standardized data across all institutions is critical, especially outcome type data and where that comes from. For the internal policy framework, I'm following on that particular term. Sorry, Nicole.
Yeah, and I believe that if you refer to internal quality assurance in the institutions and when they are coming and do the peer evaluator, what sort of data they are looking at, I confirm with Chrissy that the sort of outcome-based data are very important in the process, and in general, what sort of data they are looking at. It will be a structured framework from KAAE as well, based on the self-study that institution provides. We evaluate those self-studies and we try to select peer evaluated that confirm with the sections of the self-study report, and being able to put an expert in the area as a peer evaluator to visit the institution and only concern about that. A peer evaluator working with the financial affairs, peer evaluator working with the program assessment. So there will be different type of peer evaluator for different sections of the self-study report that the institution has provided. So sort of a standard way of looking for evidence to back up their what institution has written as a self-study report will be very important, because their job, the peer evaluator job at the first place will be checking the evidence of what institution has provided, whether they are confirming the evidence with the report provided, and vice versa. Yeah.
So we have just a couple minutes left, and so I want to take a short question, then give you a chance to wrap up because I know we're just about out of time here. So one very quick question: is it possible for ALOs to also serve as a peer reviewer for other institutions?
Oh, absolutely. That's a major part of it. That the peer evaluator from ALO from one institution and become a peer evaluator in another institution, because that's a way they gain more experience to bring back to their ALO office at their universities, and being able to interpret it in different way to make it as a best practice and use it.
And I think that's all we have time for questions for. We have some other great questions, and I'm sure that those can come to you, Dylan, and you'll be able to answer those offline for those institutions reaching out.
Thank you very much.
I want to thank everyone for their participation. We really had an awesome, the question and answering was very interesting. Please look for an upcoming KAAE training, other training available opportunities, and there'll be a session survey coming to you as well.
Thank you very much for everyone attending. See you soon.